Hi, this is David Carr, here to share some of the cool new things you can do to showcase your events on your website using RSVPMaker. RSVPMaker is a free plugin for WordPress that adds event publishing, event registration, event payment, and email newsletter, email invitation capabilities. One recent improvement is increased flexibility to display your events in lots of different ways, in lots of dramatic ways on your website. Now, this is a plugin that allows you to register people for your events without them having to click away to Meetup or Eventbrite or any other site. You can keep their attention. You can allow them, after they finish registering for your event, to discover other cool things that you've got going on, whether it's your blog or your products or your nonprofit mission. All of the events that I'm sharing are modeled on some work that I've done for Swank Specialty Produce. All the best chefs in South Florida get their produce there, and they hold these wonderful gourmet dinners. Each of these events has a featured image designated. So that's the image that's shown very dramatically at the top of each event post, but we can also use that in our summary view. Here's a quick tour. Everything I'm showing you is made possible by working with what's called the WordPress query loop block. Now in WordPress, we have this concept of blocks. If I open up a page, at first the sidebar shows the properties of the page, like the featured image that I could set. But if I go through and click on a paragraph, click on a heading, or click on this image, we'll see different controls. And actually, these two images are set up in a layout block called the columns block. So to see the controls for that, it helps to open up this outline view. So it's this stair step icon in the upper left-hand corner, allows me to find the columns control, where I could change this, for example, from 2 columns to 3 columns. And I can also see that within this, I have 2 columns. One has a heading and an image. The other one also has a heading and an image. And we can actually rearrange things from within the outline view, or I could decide I want this image to not be displayed in the columns. I want it to be up here. Now, if I insert a query loop block, which I would do by clicking the plus button either on the line or up in the corner, I can type in query loop, and I actually have a couple of variations set up specifically for RSVPMaker. We're not going to mess with those right now. Just for demo purposes, I'm going to insert the standard query loop, and one of the things it asked me to do is to choose a layout pattern, and there's some lovely layout patterns in here. We'll just choose this default. And the other thing I need to do is the query loop can be either used in a page, or it actually can be included in the templates of your website using one of the newer block themes. So I need to tell this that it's not part of a template. I'm going to specifically set this to be RSVPMaker event content. And I get a fairly nice display here, but I have a couple of problems with it. One is it's not showing me the event date. In fact, it's showing me this other date, which is the date the item was published. And I actually want to select that and get rid of it. But this is another nested arrangement of blocks. So the outer query loop is actually a visual representation of the database lookup. I'm telling it what kind of content to retrieve, and I can set options like how many items per page do I want to have displayed. But then within that, we have what's called the post template. It tells it for each item that I look up, I want to display the title, the featured image if one has been provided, and an excerpt. And to transform this into something more suitable for an event, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the excerpt block, and I'm going to switch to this option called RSVPMaker loop blocks. And that actually inserts several different blocks too. We have one that represents the date, and we can come in here and decide that we want our date to be centered. We have a special block for the event excerpt, and then we have a block representing the button. Within that, find that there is a buttons block where we can decide that this should be aligned to the center, and we can click on the specific button and maybe change the background color to one of the others that's been provided by my theme. Maybe change to the text to say register instead of RSP now. These other options are just a quick way of inserting the query loop in a version that's been customized for RSVPMaker content. So this version actually includes the calendar grid up top. And down here, if I go into the post template section, we actually have a standard post template that has been supplied here, but I can also change that. If I click on the loop, I can pick one of these other layouts. Say I like this one, and so that's great, but then again I would need to come in, and I would recommend that you plug in the RSVP query loop blocks. Then we also have a bunch of stuff in here more appropriate for a blog post than an event. So I'm going to take out the publication date and the author. Until recently, RSVPMaker used a single block, the RSVPMaker upcoming events listing block, to represent your events listing. It had a few formatting controls, but it didn't have that concept of the post template that you could customize. So to upgrade, you can click on the little calendar icon, and one of the transform to options is query loop. And you'll actually get the RSVPMaker variation on the query loop that's been customized a little bit. You could go through and decide you want to pick one of these other standard templates. It's just then you would need to go through and add in your RSVPMaker query loop blocks. If we look at some other examples, this one doesn't have 2 or 3 columns of events, but if we look inside the post template, for each event, there's actually a columns block, and in the left column is the featured image, in the right column is the title and the RSVPMaker excerpt. Or this one uses what's called the cover block, which gives us a background image and then other blocks that we embed inside that image can be superimposed on top of it. So the title is in there, the date block is in there, and then after that we have the excerpt and the button, where I've taken the time to change the color of the button. This layout is set up to show the next event in full detail. So the very next event is set up by telling this that we only want one event to be displayed. But the post template has a cover block up top, the title, the date, and the button are all embedded inside that cover block. And then we have a block called content that displays the full content of the post. So instead of the excerpt, we have the full content in this version. And then down beneath that, we can have a listing of all the other events. So if you can't go to the next event, maybe you can go to one of these others. So here the query loop block has a parameter set called offset. So it's up to 20 events, but offset of 1 means we're going to skip the first one, because the first one's going to be displayed in detail up top. And then we have a post template that's more like the ones we've seen elsewhere that has the query loop excerpt, read more, and the RSVPMaker button. In this case, it's centered. Now, some of the additional things you get with the RSVPMaker query loop variation, again, it's just a variation. It is the the standard query loop block, but just with a couple of extra features and presets. But in the right sidebar, we can actually toggle this between showing future events and past. Maybe there's some place on your site where you want to have a listing of past events so people can see other recent events in a series. Or we can set a category. So there's a category called featured. Actually, I'm going to apply that to the top one. So this is an alternative to listing just the next event. We can list a featured event. So we have a category called featured. And so now this is going to pull in the featured event. And down here, instead of saying skip one, we can turn off the offset so that it will show the next upcoming event. In the sidebar down here, we have the option to exclude a category. So this is our featured event. Right now it's showing up twice. We don't want that, so we can say we want the featured event to be excluded, and now it doesn't show up there. So we can have the up top set to show the featured event, and the listing down the bottom set up to show everything except the featured event. To read a blog post that goes into more detail, visit RSVPMaker.com. Hey, one more thing. RSVPMaker is all about getting that call to action, getting people to click the button. Please click the like button. Please post a comment to let me know if this was valuable.